Hi friends, welcome back to SPK English Academy. I am Srenavasappa, English teacher in a government model school, Karnataka state. In this video, we will discuss Victorian Novel Part-III, George Eliot, George Meredith, Thomas Hardy, George Gissing, Samuel Butler. So these five are the remaining novelists of Victorian period. In the last two videos, we discussed Victorian Novel Part 1, Part 2. Today we'll discuss the remaining Part 3. So, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, you have to subscribe. So, Victorian novel plays very vital role in English literature, especially that George Eliot and Thomas Hardy are very important writers of Victorian age. So these see that George Eliot, Victor Thomas Hardy are very important novelists. They have their own influence and status in English novel. Now we have to look at what are the contributions of these five novelists to English literature. How did they give their contribution? What kind of novels? What kind of genre they followed in their writing, and what are the main important novels and novelists of this age. So we'll discuss now one by one. So especially you have to read in detail of the some of the works of George Eliot and Thomas Hardy. So every year there is a question on George Eliot's Middlemarch and Thomas Hardy's The Return of the Native, Jude the Obscure, and other two novels. So you have to study in detail the character relation and the themes of these two novelists. We will discuss one by one briefly. Now to look at George Eliot, the most important novelist of the Victorian age. See, George Eliot was a pen name adopted by Mary Anne Ewan. This question was asked. This name was asked in the previous question paper. What was the adopted name of Mary Ann Evans, daughter of a land agent in Warwickshire? So why did George Eliot change her name instead of Mary Ann Evans? She used George Eliot, the male's name, the man's name. So because in that Victorian age, the books are were published only written by the male writers. So in order to publish her novels, Mary Anne Evans changed her name as George Eliot and gave her novels to publication. So this was the reason for changing her name, George Eliot, from Mary Ann Evans. See, she educated herself by miscellaneous reading. She was brought up in the strict discipline of a Puritan household, but coming in contact with scientists and George Henry Lewis. She renounced her faith in Christianity. She worked as assistant editor of the Westminster Review. It's a literary magazine. She was English novelist, essayist, poet, journalist, and translator. She was one of the leading writers of the Victorian era. So now we have to look at the works of George Eliot. First, we will look at the novels. What are the novels? See, Adam Vede, which was published in 1859, The Mill on the Floss, which was published in 1860, Silas Marner, 1861, Romola, 1863, Felix Halt or the Radical. See, Felix Halt or the Radical. So, the Radical is the subtitle of Felix Halt. There is one question in UGC NET and KSET question paper on the subtitles of the books. So, you have to study all the subtitles of the books like novels and especially dramas. See, Middlemarch or a study of Provincial life, which was published in 1871-72. So this was one of the most important novel of George Eliot. So in every university, this novel is set for study. And also, there is a question in the previous KSET and UGC NET on Middlemarch or a study of Provincial life. See, a study of Provincial life is a subtitle of Middlemarch novel. So please read that Mr. Middlemarch in detail, their theme and characteristics. So next work is that is Daniel Deronda, which was published in 1876. So, brief information about the novels of George Eliot. The first, Adam Bede. It was based on an anecdote. Anecdote means real life story told by a Methodist aunt from her own experience. A pretty girl in jail had confessed to her that she had murdered her illegitimate child. So next work, The Mill on the Floss. It is mainly autobiographical in its earlier parts. The strained relationship between Maggie and Tom corresponded to George Eliot's relations with her brother Isaac. Next is Romola. It is a historical romance of the Italian Renaissance. The scene is Florence at the end of the 15th century when confusion prevailed in the city after the expulsion of the Medici. The character of Savonarola, the Dominican monk who denounced the artistic license of the time, is powerfully drawn. Next one, that is the Felix Halt or the Radical. It is a social novel and political novel set during the Reform Act of 1832. It is set in Trebi Magna town. Remember where the novel was set or the drama was set. One question is in question paper. So George Eliot, herself a radical, paints here an ideal picture of the radical reform. Felix not contact with preaching radical principle act on them by working as a poor artisan. He is contrasted with the rich and conventional radical Harold Ransom, who, when he stands for Parliament, comprises his principles by stooping to subtle bribery. The heroine Esther failed with the choice between the two, choose Felix and poverty. And very important novel of George Eliot, Middlemarch, or A Study of Provincial Life. A Study of Provincial Life is a subtitle of Middlemarch. So this novel is set in Middlemarch. The scene is led the provincial town of Middlemarch in the first half of the 19th century. There are two parallel stories of unhappy marriage. Dorothea Brooke, an idealistic and saintly Puritan, marries an elderly and pedantic scholar, Casaubon, who spends his honeymoon in research. Casaubon, suspecting that Dorothea is in love with his young cousin, Ladislaw, adds a codicil to his will just before his death, cutting off Dorothea from her inheritance if she marries Ladislaw. In the second story, a young idealistic doctor, Lydgate, marries the beautiful but prosaic and materialistic Rosalind de Vinci, who ruins all his hopes of scientific discoveries. The tragic stories are revealed by the humorous of Dorothea's uncle, May Brooke, and Mr. Cadwallader. the rector's wife. Now we have to look at George Meredith, and there one novelist of 19th century, that is Victorian age. He was the grandson of Melchizedek Meredith, a prosperous tailor and a novel outfitter of Portsmouth, and only child of Augustus Meredith and a local innkeeper's daughter. Works are he studied law and but drifted to literature. So works of George Meredith are The Ordeal of Richard Feveril, Yvonne Harrington, Emilia in England or Susdra Belloni, Rhoda Planning, Victoria. So you have to look at only the works. You have to remember the name of works. Don't study any works of George Meredith in detail. The Adventures of Harry Richmond, Duchamp's Career, The Egoist, Tragic Comedians, Diana of the Crossways, One of Our Conquerors, Lord Ormond and his Aminta, The Amazing Marriage. So see, that is George Meredith is a minor novelist of Victorian novel. Now we have to look at Thomas Hardy, the most important and influential novelist of English literature and that 19th century, especially that Victorian age. You have to study this Thomas Hardy in detail, mainly of his four novels. I will tell you later. So there is a question on Thomas Hardy's novel, every question paper. See, he was an English novelist and poet and a short story writer. Many of his novels concern tragic characters struggling against their passions and social circumstances. Most of his novels are set in the semi fictional region of Wessex. So, this Wessex, the fictional semi region Wessex, was asked in many previous question papers, both UGC and KSET. So, as the Malgudi Days is an imaginary fictional region of his novels, in the same way, Wessex is the semi fictional region of Thomas Hardy in many of his novels. And you have to look at the one of the American novelist Sound and Fury as author, that is William Faulkner, Eknopatwa. Eknopatwa is his is a seminal semi-fictional region of novels. In the same way, his is Wessex. He was born near Dorchester, Casterbridge of his famous novel. He was trained as an architect and practiced the profession until released from it by the success of his first novel. See, The Poor Man and the Lady, which was published in 1867, unfinished and lost. So, which of the novel is unfinished and lost of Thomas Hardy? You have to remember this: The Poor Man and the Lady. It was unfinished and lost novel. Under the Greenwood Tree, it is a rural painting of the Dutch school, which was published in 1872. See, Far from the Madding Crowd, published in 1874. See, the main important novel, that is The Return of the Native, which was published in 1878. You please read this novel in detail. The Mayor of the Castor Bridge. You have to read this novel also, which was published in 1886. The Life and Death of a Man of Character. The subtitle of this novel. Remember this. So please read The Return of the Native and The Mayor of the Castor Bridge in detail. Another one, that is Woodlanders, which was published in 1887. The Wessex Tales, 1888, a collection of short stories. The Wessex Tales is the collection of short stories of Thomas Hardy. Tess of the D'Urbervilles, or A Pure Woman Faithfully Presented, published in 1891. So this was one of the most important. A Pure Woman Faithfully Presented is the subtitle of the novel Tess of the D'Urbervilles. So please read this novel also in detail. Jude the Obscure, which was published in 1895. This is also very important novel. I am suggesting here The Return of the Native, Mayor of the Castor Bridge, Tess of the D'Urbervilles, Jude the Obscure. So you should read these four novels in detail for the exam point of view. See, and romances and fantasies. What are the romances and fantasies of Thomas Hardy? A Pair of Blue Eyes, a novel, 1873. The Trumpet Major, Two on a Tower, a romance. A Group of Noble Dames. It is a collection of short stories. See, Group of Noble Dames. It is a collection of short stories written by Thomas Hardy. The Well Beloved, a sketch of temperament. Some of the novels of ingenuity. Desperate Remedies, a novel 780, published in 1871. The Hand and Ethelberta, a comedy in chapter 1876. A Laodicean, a story of 2 day 1881. See, now we look at George Gissing, another one important novelist of Victorian age. He was born at Wakefield in Yorkshire, where his father kept a small chemist's shop. He was a brilliant student at Owens College, Manchester. He fell in love with a prostitute. To finance his rather insatiable thirst for gin, he robbed the college common room, was caught and sent to jail. Later, his friends providing the passage, he fled to America, where he experienced great poverty and misery, which is reflected in his famous autobiographical novel, New Grub Street. He published his first novel, Workers in the Dawn, in 1880, which with his own expense, but it was failed by the Jonian Sea, which was published in 1901. It includes his trip to Italy in 1897. Veronilda, a historical novel of the 16th century Italy. See some other works. Unclassed. Isabella Clarion, a life's morning demos, Ezra, the Netherworld, the Emancipated, Born in Exile, Odd Women, In the Year of Jubilee, The World Fool. So these are important works of George Gissing. See, Town Traveler, The Crown of Life, Our Friend and Charlton, Wild, Warburton, and two collections of short stories published posthumously. His non-fictional works, Charles Dickens, A Critical Study, By the Ionian Sea, The Private Papers of Henry Raycroft. Now the last novelist of Victorian age, that is Samuel Butler. The boldest rebel against the Victorian values, was son of a clergyman and was intended for the church. The works of Samuel Butler are Erewhon, published in 1872, Erewhon Revisited, published in 1901, The Way of All Flesh, 1903, a semi-autobiographical novel of Butler, The Fair Heaven, published in 1974, or Ironical Defense of the Miraculous in Christianity, Resurrection of Christ, Alps and Sanctuaries of Piedmont and the Canton Hessiana, 1881, a travel book resulting from his visits to Italy. The authoress of Odyssey, published in 1897, ascribing a poem to a woman of Sicily. So, friends, so you have to study all these works and all these novelists, especially you have to study George Eliot and Thomas Hardy in detail. So, because these are very important novelists in the history of English literature. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to my channel and support me, encourage me to do the next coming videos. Keep on studying daily of English literature. Make your own notes. Don't depend on other notes. Refer 4 to 5 different authors of English literature books. Then you will get an idea about literature, and please refer at least 5 to 6 previous years question paper. Then you will get the idea where the questions are raised. So you have to improve the area in which topic or in which uh, area are you weak. Then only you will become successful person in the examination and in your life. Thank you for my video for your support.